Yo, about 2 weeks ago, I said I was collecting questions and would answer them in the quote-unquote final video of my SR-25 rebuild series, but, well, it's been 2 weeks, and I feel bad for making those people who ask questions wait this long. So, I'm doing this voiceover on top of some of my raw CQB footage. Doing it as a voiceover because my face isn't handsome enough to show you guys, unlike some other YouTubers like the SR-25, for example. Anyway, on to the questions. I left out the usernames just in case they don't want to be publicized, though if someone were to care enough and were crazy enough, they could just look through my video comments and they'd find out who wrote the questions anyway, and those people are weird. Sorry, did not have time yet to see the video from beginning to end, but the SR-25 subject is too compelling to me as not to ask this question right away. How can I change my classic army SR-25 into single shot only? Of course, I could alter the fire select switch to block a full turn, but I was thinking of changing the gearbox interior in order to accomplish this. Flipping the fire select switches is not the only way in this case. As an auto-fire SR-25, it is not allowed as a DMR at our skirmish fields here in the Netherlands, so what's the approach to get rid of the auto? The classic army SR-25, I believe, comes with a trigger trolley out of the box, and if you still have it in there, there isn't much you can do to lock out full auto from inside the gearbox. The Airsoft Tech has a video on fixing semi-auto clicking, and in it he outlines how the cutoff lever is critical to semi-auto functionality. I'll summarize. After you pull the trigger trolley and its contacts touch, powering the motor and spinning gears. When the selector is in the semi and safe positions, the spring on it is compressed enough to reset the cutoff lever. So each time the sector gear spins around, the cutoff cam on the gear's underside knocks the lever, which in turn pulls the trolley off of the trigger and disconnecting power. The key here is the compression on that spring. So if the selector plate moves too far away, e.g. when you flip the selector into auto, the compression disappears and the cutoff lever does not reset. The trigger contacts stay touching and constantly powering the motor, and you're stuck in full auto. So to achieve this with the traditional hardware, you want to always keep that spring compressed. My quick and dirty fix would be to do something like blocking the selector plate. This way on the outside you don't have to modify the receiver or the switch itself. And this, you will also keep that spring compressed, allowing the reset of that lever. The more effective method, and you'll get way more features out of it, is to just buy an electronic trigger unit, ETU, commonly referred to as a MOSFET, but that's a misnomer. A MOSFET is a single one of those electronic chips. It's a long story, but back in the day they were simply used to cleanly close and open the circuit to power the motor, preventing scorching of the trigger contacts. In modern ETUs, there are way more MOSFETs involved. You get fancy things like precocking too, so that's my suggestion. Otherwise, do a little drop of JB Weld behind the selector plate, and that way you can't force the plate back after automatic, or after semi. I would probably switch the selector into semi, note where the plate is in that mode, and put a dab of JB Weld behind the plate so you can't force the plate back anymore, or use some sort of sturdy material and epoxy or glue it there so you can't move the plate back. Oh, and don't worry having not watched the video from beginning to end yet. Just watching any part of the video and leaving a comment or like is probably way more effective in the algorithm. What was the reason for shooting crappy? There's a bunch of reasons. I'll probably cover this as I answer the other questions. Bucking? How many degrees? British? Degrees. How many degrees? It's an EMG Atlas flat hop bucking, and it is 60 durometer. What did you do to stop the hop inconsistencies? A lot of things. To start, I wrapped some parts of my inner barrel with foil tape because the outer barrel's inner diameter was actually quite large and there was a lot of wiggle space. So every time you'd fire the gun, the inner barrel would vibrate down at the end, throwing the BB off. And a little bit of vibration at the barrel is a lot of deviation downrange. I was also experiencing PME in those videos, so PME is premature engagement of the sector gear and piston rack. When the piston hasn't fully reset forward and the teeth come back around, it's effectively interrupting a stroke, and that, as you can imagine, would definitely lead to energy output inconsistencies, and if the energy output is inconsistent, the BB doesn't have as much backspin on it, etc, etc. Moving to the inside of the gearbox, the piston head, the air brake piston head. I was really excited to use it, and I'm pretty sure I got a few other people also excited to see the results of it, but it's honestly pretty bad, especially if you're trying to get energy output consistency. It sounds great, and I really want to use it, but it's probably something to do with how the piston head isn't perfectly aligned throughout the stroke and at the end of the stroke. Yes, it's drastically decelerates the piston, but I was accounting for that with 18-to-1 gears and a really slow motor. The problem is probably related to how the metal dingus that pokes through the cylinder head, which causes the air braking phenomena, it's likely wiggling around a lot, causing inconsistent air output at the very last, half inch of compression, and it's too inconsistent. The energy output needs to be consistent for BBs to fly straight. And then a little bit forward of the piston head, I was experiencing a lot of what people call mid-cap syndrome, where if you have a full or half-loaded mid-cap mag, you'd experience feeding issues, energy issues, all of the above, just because the BBs in the magazine are pushing up on the nozzle, messing with your nozzle alignment a little bit. To fix that, in my case, I measured the inner diameter of my hop unit. At the time, it was a Max M4A, and the outer diameter of my nozzle, an FPS Delrin nozzle, they were about 0.4 millimeters apart, and that was enough for the nozzle to wiggle out of alignment with the bucking and cause a little bit of energy loss. To fix that, I wrapped some foil tape around that, and I'm noticing lately that I wrap foil tape around a lot of things to fix my problems. Shimming the nozzle in place, effectively shimming the nozzle in place. And lastly, among the things that I attempted to fix to resolve my inconsistencies is the concern of overvoluming. In my case, I don't think the overvoluming was causing that bad of deviation issues. Deviation problems, but at the muzzle end, it was making a lot of loud popping noises, and I was just not happy about that. So I got a ported cylinder, effectively giving me about 16 teeth worth of compression stroke. And I also learned this while messing around with my SR-25, is a well-placed port can actually increase your energy output. This is contingent on a piston that weighs an ass ton. To describe what's going on here is, in cases where you actually have a really good sealing compression system, as the piston accelerates forward and your seal is damn perfect, you can actually dislodge the BB from the bucking lips and send it down the barrel prematurely. And as the BB is going down range and your piston is still trying to catch up, that means the volume inside is not compressing as fast as you want, and the air spring is not as efficient, oftentimes causing the BB to exit the barrel before you finish compression, wasting a bunch of air. There are some people out there who would take advantage of this at the chrono. They would use a 0.2 or 0.25 or anything really light, and that would enable them to eject the BB out the inner barrel before the piston has completed its stroke, resulting in a lower number at the chrono. And later in the game or day, they put in 0.3s or 0.4s, something really heavy. This allows them to get a higher dwell time out of their system, meaning there's more time for the piston to complete its stroke, more usage of the air spring and volume of air in general. This allows them to send a BB downrange with a higher energy value than with the lighter BB. Joule creep in this fashion is way more common in springers though, because they can freely have super heavy pistons and super strong springs that accelerate super slowly compared to an AEG where everything in our world revolves around gears. And the rate at the sector gear spinning strictly dictates how long you're allowed to have your piston take to complete a stroke, resulting in really slow cyclic rates, meaning your full auto isn't going to be very impressive if you're allowed to use it, and semi-auto spam, well, your finger's going to outrun the gun. If you precock, you'll get really good response no matter what your gear ratio is, but like I said, if you click twice and your gears aren't ready, you're not getting a BB downrange on the second shot. What did you end up doing for solving PME, and what ratio gear set are you using? I am using an 18-to-1 gear set with a 28 TPA motor spinning roughly 19,000, 21,000 with a full 11.1. And with a little bit of quick maths, you find out that my SR-25 has a rate of fire of about 18.5 BBs per second. Very, very slow in the modern day. So it's very surprising that I hit PME at all, but with that air brake piston head, it drastically slows down the piston at the last half inch, causing the last 1 or 2 teeth to always get hit by the sector gear. So 1, I got rid of the air brake piston head, and 2, while I have a ported cylinder now, I'm still pulling 19 teeth. However, that 19 teeth past the 16 teeth stroke is in that ported section, and in that area, the piston head isn't doing any compression yet, so there's no compressed air forces pushing back on the piston, allowing the whole assembly to accelerate as fast as physically possible as the spring behind it is pushing it unencumbered. I've been itching to get a similar build on this platform, so I'm all ears on what I should do. See next question. For under $600, what would you recommend for an SR-25 Platinum build that can swap between 1.5 to 2.8 Joule if need be? Planning an open play battle rifle milsim legal DMR, ideally with just a swap of a spring, semi-only of course. I'm thinking $300 base gun, $50 for mags, $100 to $150 for a CNC gearbox. Priorities are trigger response, reliability, accuracy, and durability. Any tips and quirks of the platform would be sweet, and parts compatibility that you experience would be nice too. Details of the difference. Love your videos, by the way. I've learned a lot from you. Thank you for your kind words. I find myself a shit teacher, but if you can pick up anything useful from my sort of teching diaries, that's awesome. Might I suggest upping that by $100 or $200, because on my SR-25, if you take out all the BS stuff that you don't really need for a good functioning, accurate SR-25, like the receiver, handguard, optics, and all that jazz on mine, I think it comes to around $800-900, and that's me picking top of the line parts for the job. You don't have to be like me and waste money on expensive parts. There are definitely affordable parts and components out there that can do just as well in the right hands. 2.8 joules though, you're gonna want one heck of a spring in there, so your gearbox better be up to spec, and I would not use bearings in this build. Bushings all the way. So yes, on a CNC gearbox, I think the SEMA Platinum standard gearbox is actually quite sturdy, but it's also really dang heavy, so maybe get a new one. You're right, it will set you back about $100 to $150 on top of the $300 gun, so we're only really left with about $200 of wiggle room now, which very quickly gets consumed, as I'm going to suggest you get good electronics in there. A Leviathan is like $120, I think, a Perrin is $80, and then you're going to need a good motor to drive it all. It's likely going to be a brushed motor like my setup, because in order to hit those high joule outputs, your piston's going to have to be really heavy and your spring's going to be really strong, so you're also going to need a strong motor. However, if you go brushless, which is arguably much stronger than the brushed counterparts, they also spin a shitload faster. And if your gears cycle too quickly with a heavy piston, you're going to run into PME, like I was. But if you do get the 19-tooth SiegeTech gear set, you might be able to get away with a low-speed end brushless motor, and if you can get away with it, I highly suggest you go for it, because brushless motors are just way more efficient, and you don't have to worry about as much maintenance as a brushed motor, e.g. you don't have to change brushes out every few 10,000 shots. On to compression. Since you're going for freaking 2.8 joules, you're going to want a piston body that can withstand the spring you require to get that output, and as far as I know, the only piston body out there that is 19 tooth and can sustain that is the Retro Arms piston body. You might have trouble finding it, but that's the only one I would advise getting for this build. Next, piston head. Normally I would go with the POM CNC one, but since you're going for super high energy, you're going to want a heavy piston head, and lately I've been using the FPS soft air ones. You can probably find one on Paragon Armory. At the time of recording this, I currently actually have a Gate Eon piston head with all of the weights installed. I will get back to you in the final video with more testing later on how that works. But no matter the piston head, I would suggest replacing the O-ring with an X-ring. They just seal so much better, and they'll definitely give you maybe at least 5 or 10 FPS boost. Then we have the cylinder around the piston body. It's not to be overlooked. Honestly, you could get away with the lower end one though, but I would definitely polish it. And I would actually get one with a port in it, just like mine. It seems counterintuitive to lose compression volume, but in the end, all you really need is a lot of energy into the air spring to get a BB out. And as long as there's enough air to get the BB all the way end, at least 1-to-1, you shouldn't need anything else in theory. So any space that isn't compression is space for the piston to accelerate and the spring imparting energy into the piston body. Then, from there, your piston head imparts all the energy into the compressed air, making an air spring, slinging the BB down range. I've seen ranges from anywhere between 1.6 to 2.2 for volume ratios. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to trial and error your way through this. Moving a little bit more forward from the piston, now we have the cylinder head and nozzle assembly. Cylinder heads, the rocket ones have been good enough for me, and it works. The FPS cylinder heads are also acceptable to me, but they're a little bit more controversial because they have that rubber padding on the front, which allows the cylinder head to actually move forward when the piston slams into it. There's a lot of people who don't like this concept because they say it stresses the gearbox shell by those pins, but in FPS's case, unlike Max definitely damages gearboxes, but FPS's case, the alignment holes are elliptical enough to allow that movement. Then, of course, one of the most important parts is your barrel choice. I am on team tight bore. A lot of people want to go wide bore. Various reasonings, I am firmly behind tight bore, mainly due to the fact that tight bores are just more efficient in terms of air efficiency, hands down. A wide bore, there's a crap ton of space around the BB for air to escape, forcing you to have a much higher volume ratio. There are tons of arguments and reasons on both sides. It's up to you, but a good barrel will set you back about $50 to $80. And now you're probably staring at about a $800 parts list right now, which is $200 more than your $600 budget, I understand, but you can definitely cut some corners here and there. You don't have to get a good barrel. You could use your stock one, polish and lap it, save some money there. You don't need an expensive hop chamber. The rotary ones are just nice to have. There are cheaper, maybe $30 ones compared to the Max $50, $60, or $80 now actually. Yeah, you've saved like $100 there already. And get a Maple Leaf Macaron if you don't want to spend time R-hopping. Those are plenty good for mid-range. I would definitely get the hardest one possible though if you're going for 2.8 freaking joules. And that's about it. And like you said, it will be a simple spring swap. Given that you are using very slow gears, you can get away with using a weaker spring to push that piston and avoid PME. Just don't pick too weak of a spring because you will run into PME with a heavy piston. And yeah, good luck on your build. 10-year-old boy approved for the bright blue color of the details. Your boy has good taste.
I shot his gun and he called it.
Joint SR-25 gameplay when? When I can't fry an egg on a fucking sidewalk. Would definitely love to play with you though, Q. And I have a few remaining ones that aren't really related to my SR-25, but I found them spread across my channel and some comment sections. Your DSG sounds like it's flossing. Makes my loins warm and tingly. Me too. I'm looking to do an SSG build that really just focuses on reliability and trigger response. Not very well versed in the DSG area, couldn't imagine starting with Vector, don't recommend it. What gear set would you recommend using, or partial like an SSH gear sector, or etc., sector gear? And which would you recommend keeping, like your spur gear? And are there any modifications I'd have to make to fit a different gear type in, because that's what I keep reading. Also, what are the benefits of that helical bevel gear? Is it drop in? The helical bevel, let's start with that first, because it's Pog. It is very nice. It is definitely not a drop-in because you have to work on your motor. You have to take off the old one and put the new one on. And if you're using a brushless motor, it's fine. But if it's a brushless motor, there's a few extra steps like desoldering. So I wouldn't recommend using the helical set on brushless motors unless you're pretty handy on a soldering iron, or you can pay someone else to do it. I actually wouldn't recommend keeping the Crytek spur gear because you either have to stack a crap ton of shims on there to get the spacing right, or buy Prometheus's expensive CNC aluminum spacer. It's ridiculous how expensive that piece is. I don't know why I bought it. Just get a new gear set. You get more money value out of it. But actually, keep the sector gear. It's plenty fine. As for modifications you'd have to do to the gearbox, since you're not doing the DSG route, you don't have to do that many things, like the tappet leg reinforcement or filing out the tappet leg channel. That is only a problem if you go with the Rocket DSG. Now there are actually two problems that are legit issues that you might come across when doing Urigun. Airsoft Customs has a video on his DSG vector process, and there's this section where the sector gear itself, if you shim it particularly high, you'll run into some of the gearbox material and have to file that away. A second one is when you're doing a beveled pinion shimming, you might find that you don't have enough space to shim the bevel up, especially if you're using the Lonex kit. In Airsoft Customs Again's video, he actually milled out a layer of material from that gearbox so they can sit the bushing in lower, deeper into the shell to set enough space to shim the bevel in the right spot. I didn't do that, and honestly, because I didn't, my gun doesn't sound as good as I wanted to. I hope that helps. Good luck on your Vector build. I have 2 questions. How much did the Vector DSG cost, and are you ever going to do an AK? All in all, with my trial and error research and development of my Vector, it probably cost me about $1,300. If I were to do it again, the gun cost what, $500? Pair and ETU was like $100. Gear set, 50. Spring, 15, 600, 700, 800, about $800. Am I ever going to do an AK? Eventually, maybe, but here's a peek into my character. I really don't like AKs, or any derivation of them. Segas, AKSs, all the above. The AK Alpha is the only one I approve of, actually, but it doesn't look good, the SEMA one. What's required to run a DSG in an airsoft gun? Blood, sweat, and a lot of tears. Ha ha ha, just kidding. Unless... No, seriously, personally I find DSGs easier to build in terms of maximizing performance. Like, I prefer high cyclic rate as fast as possible. High cyclic rate translates directly to reset time for your trigger. Like, if you have slow cyclic rate, you have, in a way, slow trigger response, even if you max out precocking, because you pull the trigger, it fires immediately if you have great precocking, but if you pull again before the gears spin back around, you outran the gun, and you don't get a shot on the second time. So I try to get my guns to cycle as fast as possible before PME, and in that case, SSGs are really, really hard to do, in my opinion. However, if I was building a decent, reliable SSG, it's much easier to go SSG than a reliable DSG. As for the rest of your question, what's required to run a DSG in an airsoft gun? You can watch my DSG M4 video playlist, and you'll need a good battery to run it. That's about it. Okay, that's the end of all the questions I selected. I'm sorry if you asked something and I didn't notice it. YouTube's really bad at feeding me notifications about new comments. I literally just checked earlier and I found one of these questions that from 2 weeks ago that I never saw. Hope I answered your questions hope I answered your questions well enough. See you guys later. Peace.
Yo, blue hoodie, brick, right here. Nice. Holy crap.
Yo, watch me up.
Jam, mag. Malfunction. Get that BB out of there. There we go. I had a malfunction. I had to clear it. Someone's behind us. All right. I wanted to capture that on camera. Nice flank. Go on, go on, go on, go on.
I told you, bro.
Wait, hold on. I was like, are you a friend?
Nice shot, nice shot. I told you, bro. That was the plan. Let's do it again. Other side this time, though. Hold up. You hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we'll go this way. I'll just like tank for you, you know?
No, 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 I'm with you.
You can take it all.
Hit!
I think it's good. It's brick, right? Okay, now it's basically just now it's just a guess match at this point.
Yep, we got all the bricks, right? There ain't no way. Hit!
We're set to win at this point.
Thank you. Hit, hit, hit! Oh, right in the calf. Right in the calf. Woo! Got it, got it, got it, got it.
Roll it around.
You missed. Those are all friends. You're a friend. Yeah, yeah. I didn't shoot you though. Hit. Alright, dude, you're the one push. You had the balls. Hit.
Hit. Nice shot, dude. Holy shit. I didn't get that. I was on their spawn. It felt weird. I was gonna go look for that.
What was that noise? I missed.
Woo! So close. Holy fuck.
I missed again. Ah, my nipple, bro. Ah, my nipple.
I'm so lucky you hit me. Dude, by the way, you timed your flash like a second early. That's all.
There's a shadow there. Right there. There's a friend. Come here, let me help. Woo!
Shit, I gotta change gas again.
I got him.
Ah, finger. Whew. Ah! Hit! Ah! I'm hit!
I have no clue where we are.
Oh my god! Hello. Did my bag get hit? Hit! Nice shot!
Danger, quick.
I just...